Welcome to Gaming Grains, the whiskey gaming channel. I'm your player one, Richard. Old Dominick recently revamped the entire look of their R&D bottles, from the bottles themselves to the labels, even the plastic that keeps the corks in place. And as a way of showcasing the brand new look, Old Dominick released not just one, but two distillery exclusive R&D batches. And as you can tell, I was able to get my hands on one of each. So I'm going to get into these and share with you my thoughts and let you know if you just so happen to be in Memphis, Tennessee, whether or not you need to make a stop by Old Dominick Distillery. So grab your controllers, pour yourself a dram, and let's get into it. As I had previously mentioned, Old Dominick has completely changed the look of their R&D bottles. But if you've never set foot into the Old Dominick Distillery, chances are you wouldn't even know. Now, it just so happens that I have one of their old R&D bottles that we'll very quickly take a look at, just so you can see what they used to look like compared to what they look like now. Now, on this bottle, this is the old one. You see some text in various colors on a white background, so the reds and the blues here. But really, as a consumer, what draws my eye is going to be this giant rooster, and that kind of takes away from everything else. Now, as you start to look around the bottle, you see all of the information, the tasting notes, information about the collaborators, all that stuff here, and some really tiny text that for some consumers might be challenging to read. So I can see why they would want to move away from something like this. However, I kind of prefer it, but they didn't really ask my opinion, but that's all right. We won't hold that against them. So, but I do appreciate the look of the new bottles. And from the idea of thinking about research and development, I imagine somebody in a laboratory taking notes on forms and just manipulating the liquids and beakers and flasks and etc. And I think that they really accomplished that idea with the new labels. And so as you can see here, it almost looks as if somebody was completing information on a written out or typed out form. So your text here for the top is going to be in typewriter font. The same thing over here with these individual different sections, and somebody hand wrote all the information in there. So it really gives you that research and development type feel. But I digress. We're here for the whiskey, so let's talk about the whiskey. So you can still purchase these, at least when I was there a couple weeks ago, they had plenty on the shelves. They come in 375 milliliter bottles and are about $30 a pop. Now, as I mentioned, there are two batches that were available. Batch number one is going to be this one right here. Now, this is their double oaked. It is their Tennessee straight whiskey that was finished in a secondary new charred oak barrel. Now, it does not list an age statement. I believe their Tennessee whiskey is at least 4 years, rounds about, and this has a proof point of 110.11. Now, the second one is, or batch number two, is what they call the hybrid cask. Now, this is their straight bourbon whiskey that was finished in an American and French oak hybrid cask barrel. Now, I don't know exactly what that means. To me, I think that they Frankensteined a barrel where they take American oak staves and French oak staves. They made a singular barrel that they then put that straight bourbon whiskey in. Maybe I'll reach out to Old Dominick and they can answer that for me. But it does come in at a proof point of 113.61, and I would imagine that the age statement is going to be very similar. So let's dive into the double oak first. So in on the nose, a little swirly swirl here. That smells heavenly. So the first thing that you get on the nose is going to be just caramel and vanilla, almost a butterscotch type nose to it. There's definitely just a sweetness. And then you start to pick up on those oaky notes, which of course, with it being a double oak, you want to get some oak on that nose. This just smells divine. Tennessee whiskey, double oaked, what's not to like? So let's go ahead and get on the taste. Cheers. So it leads, at least for me, with those oaky notes, then followed by that sweetness. Again, that butterscotch that you get there into a vanilla, circling back to those wood tannins or that oaky flavor. There is a bit of spice that is there, which if you're familiar with their mash bill, it's going to be different than what you would find in a Jack Daniel's for their Tennessee whiskey. I believe theirs is, I want to say like a 75, 13, 12 mash bill for their Tennessee whiskey. Old Dominick's is, and I think Jack Daniel's does an 80 something something. So it's going to be a little bit spicier compared to a Jack Daniel's Tennessee whiskey. But this is amazing. Of course, we got to get in on the taste again, but let's nose it one more time. So I love going back to the nose after the first sip because now I'm getting an almond almost with that just sweetness, not so much butterscotch, almost like a vanilla buttercream. And then, of course, you get that oakiness that is there. On the palate again, cheers. Absolutely extraordinary. Little side story. So we did, when we were going to go buy this, that was the sole purpose of going to Old Dominick that day. My wife and I, we were at the counter ready to purchase. And the gentleman that was there asked if we had tried these. And we said no. He said, all right, we'll come over to the tasting bar. We're going to let you sample these and some other things, which we'll talk about later. So this was the first one that we sampled, batch 1, double oak. He gives me a sample. I try it, fall in love with it, let my wife have some. As I'm talking to the gentleman, I hear from beside me, oh, and completely involuntary, just, of impressiveness, excitement, what have you, coming from my wife. My wife enjoys whiskey, not as much as I do, has a amazing palate, but to hear her say that lets you know that it was truly something special. So now as far as the finish goes, as I'm talking, it is still a little bit dry on the mid palate, which is something that I come to know from a double oak whiskey. So nothing surprising there. It's still getting some of that oak tannins there, a little bit of sweetness on the tongue, but for the most part, that is all but dissipated. So into the next one, we're going to move the batch 1 out of the way, move into batch 2, which is going to be the hybrid cask. Now, I will say out of the two, at least whenever I tried these at the distillery, this was not my favorite. That doesn't mean that it's not good. Just out of the two, I preferred the double oak. So, but in on the nose. So this is very similar to what I remember before. With the Old Dominick, their straight bourbon is a higher rye mash bill. So a lot of what I'm getting here is going to be some of that rye spice, or what I would call rye spice. There is a slight chocolate note to it, or toffee. There is just a faintest hint of that oak, not as prominent in my perspective compared to the double oak, but it is definitely there. That rye that I've come to know from an Old Dominick bourbon seems to really be taking the forefront. So in on the palate, cheers. Okay. A lot better than what I had remembered. It was a bit of a roller coaster there. So it followed suit with a lot of the nosing notes. So some of that rye spice followed by the oak. But as I started to go away, really got a lot of fruit sweetness. Not so much a raisin, but almost like a cherry raisin hybrid. I don't know how to describe it. Very pleasant, but almost like a honey finish there on the back end. Way better than what I had previously remembered. Pleasantly surprised, if you can't tell by my voice. So let's get in on the nose again. Again, I love nosing after you've already had a taste that really just your nose and your palate work together. A lot more of that sweetness really shines through compared to the original nosing. Those fruity notes are really coming to the forefront. So let's get in on the palate again. Cheers. Same thing with the sip. Those sweet notes really came to the forefront. Slightly different than what they were before. Still the fruitiness, those cherry notes, that honey sweetness that is there. You do get a little bit of the, for lack of a better word, I feel like a cop-out rye spice that is there. But this is really good. You do get those wood tannins from the different barrels. I will say that they do have a single barrel American oak and a single barrel French oak store picks that some places have. Buster's here in Memphis has one of each. The French oak is described as having mocha. I'm not getting a lot of chocolate here, at least not on the palate. Could have something to do with what I ate earlier or whatnot, but a lot of those fruit notes are really present here at the forefront, as well as sweetness. Not a caramel for me, but again, it's going to be this almost like a honey note that is there. So significantly better than I thought when I first had tried this. So, all right, so that was it. Both of these new R&D products, really cool looking new labels. I can't wait to see which other ones they come out with in the future. I did mention batch 3. It was called Crimson Gin, I think was what it was called. It was a gin that was finished in a red wine cask. I'm not a gin fan, but it honestly wasn't too bad. I think it would go great in a cocktail. And again, you can't beat $30 for a 375 milliliter bottle. So, all right, kind of a longer video. I went on some tangents there, but thank you for sticking with me till the end. In the comments below, let me know, have you ever tried any of Old Dominick's R&D products? If not, have you tried any distillery exclusives at a place near you? What are some things that I need to be looking for if I am out and about? As always, I certainly appreciate you sticking until the end. I'm your favorite player one, Richard. Have a good one.